What if the Sorting Hat chose by destiny, not personality? The hall is full of whispers. September 1991. Hogwarts, the first night. Candles float in slow, deliberate rows beneath an invisible ceiling, their flames steady as if the whole world is holding its breath. 4 long tables wait in near silence, 1,000 eyes lifted toward the small battered hat on the stool, toward the thin line of new students who walk forward one by one, clutching fear and hope in sweaty hands. The Sorting Hat looks harmless from a distance. A patch of frayed brim, a sag of old stitching. Then the camera drops, closer, closer, until cloth fills the frame and the hall fades. The hat lowers over a trembling first year's eyes. Darkness. A soft scrape of fabric against hair. The roar of the great hall becomes a muted thrum, like a storm heard through stone walls. Inside it smells of dust and old wool, of chalk and ashes and something faintly metallic, like blood dried long ago on ritual knives. The child blinks but sees nothing, only the weave of the hat's inner lining, threads worn thin by 1,000 foreheads. Then, beneath that darkness, another layer opens, a murmur of voices, overlapping, male and female, young and impossibly ancient, each word almost understandable and then gone. Founders. 4 of them. 4 minds braided into one artifact. Thinking, measuring, remembering. Images flicker at the edge of thought. A stone courtyard split by green fire. A boy standing on a battlefield of shattered wands and fallen banners. Crowns of light hovering above bowed heads. Serpents coiling around a lion's mane, not attacking but sheltering it. A wand dropping from a pale hand, a ring sealing itself on a finger that is not yet grown. The child does not know these things. The hat does. He has been planning this for a very long time. On the bench, another name is called. A slight girl is guided forward, knees shaking. The hat comes down. Silence stretches. A beat too long. Then another. Its brim twitches, once, twice, as if something inside is straining against invisible chains. The founder voices rise, clash, fall back. At the staff table, Professor McGonagall's fingers tighten on her parchment. Dumbledore looks up, blue eyes suddenly sharp. A moment of understanding passes between them. This is not how sorting is supposed to go. The hat mutters, just loud enough for the child to hear, and for the nearest few to catch only broken pieces. Not who you are, a pause, as if choosing treason, who you will rule. The last word is almost swallowed by the brim. Then it straightens, voice booming with artificial cheer. It calls a house that feels wrong the instant it leaves the seam. The table that should have cheered hesitates. The table that should have stayed quiet flinches as if something has been stolen. The child walks stiff to the wrong colours, the wrong crest, and sits down as though the bench might bite. Far back in the line, Harry Potter watches. He looks at her. She looks at him. Or she would, if she could bear to turn around. Instead, he sees only her rigid shoulders, the way her hands knot together. A cold shiver moves down his spine, precise as a spell. The hat's half-heard words loop in his mind, tangled with the scar on his forehead, with the strange weight of his name. He does not know about blood inheritance or thrones or wars yet, but he knows this. The hat is not just peering into them, it is looking forward, past them into something terrible and magnificent that has already begun to close around his life, more than any description could contain. Title card. A clean, simple line across the screen, September 1st, 1991. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, evening. Harry stands in line. His robes are slightly too big. The hem brushes his shoes. His fingers are clenched around the rough wool, knuckles white where the fabric bunches in his fist. He makes himself breathe. In, out. The great hall opens before him like a story he has been planning to read his whole life and was never allowed to touch. 4 long tables, 4 rivers of candlelight and colour, red and gold, green and silver, yellow and black, blue and bronze. The ceiling above them is not a ceiling at all, but a night sky, star-studded, deep, impossibly high. He tilts his head back. The world seems to go on forever. The first years shuffle and whisper. A cough. A shoe squeaks against stone. Someone ahead of him fidgets with their sleeve. Someone behind him sniffs, hard, trying not to cry. Harry is aware of all of it, but more than that, he is aware of the eyes. Hundreds of them. Students, teachers, ghosts, all of them looking. Some at the line. Most at his scar. The scar itches faintly. A tightness under the skin. His neck itches too, where the collar of his second-hand robes rubs. The fabric is clean but rough, a little shiny at the elbows from someone else's years of wear. He can feel every seam, every scratch. A small reminder that he does not quite fit yet, not into these clothes, not into this hall, not into this magical world that suddenly expects him to belong. He takes inventory without meaning to. The robes, the tooled shoes. The weight of Hagrid's coat earlier that day, still lingering in his memory like a borrowed safety, huge and warm and smelling of smoke and owls, a bag containing everything he owns now that matters, a wand, an owl, a few books, a small stack of coins from the bank called Gringotts. And in his pocket, folded twice, then twice again, the letter. The Hogwarts letter is soft at the edges from being opened and closed, read and reread. His fingers brush it like a talisman. Proof that this is real. Proof that someone wanted him. He has been planning this walk up the hall since the moment he stepped through the barrier at King's Cross, since the bricks of platform 9 3/4 slid into place behind him and the scarlet train screamed its welcome. He remembers the steam on his face, the clatter of trunks, a glimpse of red hair and a laughing family he did not dare approach. Later, a compartment, a pile of sweets, a boy named Ron talking about Quidditch as if it were the most important thing in the world. Hermione's voice in the corridor, brisk and certain, offering to help with a spell he had never heard of. He looks at her, she looks at him. Then they were here. Now the journey narrows to this single line of stone. This stool, that hat. Professor McGonagall steps forward, tall, severe, the lines of her face softened by something like pride. She carries a long roll of parchment. Sets the patched ancient hat on the stool. The hall quiets. The hat twitches once, then stills. McGonagall unrolls the parchment. The crackle of it sounds very loud. Abbott, Hannah. A girl walks forward on shaking legs. The hat drops over her eyes. A pause. A shout of a house name. Applause. Names begin to flow. One by one, children step out of the line and vanish into colour and noise. Harry swallows. Whatever happens in the next few minutes will decide where he belongs. Or if he belongs at all. And somewhere, high above him, the stars on the ceiling look down, as if they already know everything. The hall is loud and bright and full of colour. This morning was not. Dawn at Privet Drive. Thin light squeezing through the vent of a cupboard under the stairs. Dust in the air, slow and heavy. A mattress so thin he can feel every wooden slat. In the corner, spiderwebs layered over each other like abandoned maps. Harry lies there for a moment, listening for footsteps above, for the pipes, for Aunt Petunia's voice. Nothing yet. His world is small enough to list. One tiny cupboard. One too-short bed. One school trunk that used to be Dudley's toy chest, its hinges stiff, its bottom splintered. Inside, everything he owns, Dudley's cast-off trousers, too wide at the waist and fraying at the cuffs, folded with a care they do not deserve, 2 grey school shirts, one with a button that will not quite match its hole, socks darned in mismatched thread. He has been planning this without words for years, hoarding what little is his, treating each object like proof he exists. On top of the pile lies the Hogwarts letter. The parchment is soft now, tired from his hands. The creases have gone white where he has folded and unfolded it again and again until the seal is almost rubbed smooth. He knows every line, every loop of ink, but he still opens it just to see his name. Mr. H. Potter. It looks back at him as if it might mean something. Next to it, a cheap blue ballpoint pen, the kind Vernon buys in bulk and leaves by the telephone. Harry stole one, not for mischief, for record-keeping. In a thin exercise book, he has copied the school supply list in his small, cramped writing twice, then underlined it. Cauldron, robes, wand, owl, cat or toad, each word a door in his mind, each repetition a promise that this is real. Taped to the underside of the cupboard shelf, where only he can see it if he curls just right, is a torn magazine photo of a castle. Not Hogwarts, just some Scottish ruin from an advert. But it has towers and windows and stone that catches the light. He found it in the bin and smoothed it out and kept it. More than any description could contain, that picture has been his horizon. For 6 months, really, his whole life, he has been imagining somewhere else. Somewhere he might be wanted. He rehearses conversations in the dark, silent, his lips barely moving. Someone says Harry over here, and there is warmth in the word instead of annoyance. Someone asks, "How was your day?" and waits for the answer. He has been planning this without knowing the steps, escape, arrival, belonging. The contrast is almost painful. Dudley's broken toys piled in the second bedroom like a graveyard of plastic. Grey uniforms that make every day look the same. Aunt Petunia's voice, sharp as cut glass, slicing through any thought that dares to be hopeful. Then Diagon Alley, the sudden rush of owls overhead, the smell of parchment and strange spices, the way wands in Ollivanders hummed against his skin. Gringotts, white and impossible, goblins watching him with unreadable eyes as if they know everything. It still feels like a fragile dream he might wake from back under the stairs. Now, in the great hall, the dream has weight. Stone under his shoes, hundreds of candles floating above, the ceiling a night sky that looks down on him like it is judging. Children move away from him and toward long tables, swallowed by house colours and cheers. He stands in the line and forces his hands to be still. Whatever house the hat chooses, Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, even Slytherin, he will make it work. He tells himself this with the same stubbornness he used to fold Dudley's clothes, to copy the supply list, to tape that castle to his ceiling. This is his one chance not to go back to the cupboard, not to go back to being an unwanted secret. He looks at the stool. He looks at the hat. Somewhere inside, a quiet, fierce thought, please. Anywhere but there. Anywhere I can belong. The line moves. His name is coming. The hall is loud and bright and watching. The line inches forward. Names are called. Houses shout. Scarves flare into colour. Above all of it, the Sorting Hat waits on its three-legged stool like another teacher, but older than the castle. Older than the song it just sang. Harry walks because the line walks, because there is nowhere else to go. He does not know that the thing he fears is already inside his head, already listening. Canon is clear about one thing. The hat is not just fabric and enchantment. It carries the combined intelligence of all four founders, their memories and their arguments, their ideas of what a house should mean. It uses legilimency, quiet and precise, slipping through surface thoughts, deeper fears, buried wants. In the time it takes to lower onto a child's head, it can see more of them than most adults ever will. It looks for traits the founders prized. Bravery that runs toward danger instead of away. Ambition that sharpens itself into plans. Loyalty that endures humiliation and fear. Intellect that cannot stop asking why. But it also does something stranger. It listens. The hat hears the child's own preference, their instinctive pull toward or away from a house, and it weighs that choice heavily. Harry proves this. On the stool, the hat tastes his ambition, his hunger to prove himself, the shadow of something dark and serpentine coiled around his scar. Slytherin would help him on the way to greatness, it thinks. He has been planning this, in his own small way, without even knowing, learning to endure, to hide, to endure again. But the moment he thinks, not Slytherin, the entire balance shifts. Choice becomes a lever. The hat moves him to Gryffindor. Hermione nearly stalls between Gryffindor and Ravenclaw, her mind a storm of answers, her heart already reaching for the friends she has not met. Ron's loyalty and insecurity pull together, fear of being overshadowed wrapped tight around a fierce, stubborn devotion. Neville's bravery sits under layers of shyness, like a sword left in its sheath too long. Draco arrives certain of his place, ambition and pure blood pride shining like a house banner in his thoughts. Each time the hat reads who they are at 11, not a fixed future but a web of possible paths. J.K. Rowling has said the hat considers choice strongly, that it does not truly see the future, only potential. It glimpses what might be if a child is challenged, encouraged, or left to coast. It is a mirror tilted slightly forward, not a prophecy. So here is the quiet, unsettling question as the line in the Great Hall shortens and Harry's name draws near. If the hat can already sense potential, already lean on choice, what would happen if someone re-enchanted it to look further? Not just at who they are trembling under the brim, but at who they are fated to become. He looks at the stool. He looks at the hat. Somewhere else in the castle, centuries of old magic shift, more than any description could contain. The hat is not just waiting. It is remembering. Long before Harry ever looks at that three-legged stool, the old brim has watched empires of school children rise and fall, lifetimes measured in 7-year increments. In its first century, it was simple, almost innocent, a clever patchwork of the founders' minds, reading thoughts, weighing courage against cunning, loyalty against wit. Then the founders died, and the world did what it always does. It began to argue about the future. The first changes come quietly, a winter midnight. The headmaster's office lit by a single blue flame, 3 witches and 1 wizard in robes that carry older crests than even Hogwarts itself. They do not sing. They do not joke about fraying seams. They draw a circle of salt and ash, set the hat in the centre, and begin to speak names. Peveril, Gryffindor, Slytherin, Ravenclaw, Bones, Black. Names that carry wars inside them. They have been planning this for years, tracing blood inheritance lines through crumbling parish records and Gringotts ledgers, following who married whom, who vanished, who changed their name and walked away. Each name is a thread. Each thread is tied, with careful, ruthless intention, into the hat's lining. Genealogical magic, old and possessive, seeps into the cloth. The hat shudders once, then again. After that night, it does more than listen. When a child's head touches the inner band, the hat still hears thoughts, still tastes fear and hope, and the faint, sharp tang of ambition. But now it also looks outward and forward, along branching paths of time. It peers down one line and sees a boy in green robes standing between 2 wands, stopping a war before it begins. Down another, the same boy in red, brave and beloved, but too late to save half the world. It watches a girl in blue raise a quill like a scepter, rewriting magical lore, the same girl in gold, brilliant but contained, her reforms never leaving the classroom. It learns to feel which futures are soft and which are already hardening, where choices still breathe, and where something like fate has taken root. Thrones, trials, betrayals at long tables, broken wands on cold stone. It does not decide outcomes, it arranges the board, nudging each piece toward the place where that destiny is most likely to ripen or be contained. Pure blood guardians approve. This is what they wanted. A hat that can sense the hidden black air before anyone else, that can smell a long-lost Ravenclaw branch in a Muggle-born girl and keep her close to allies or very far from enemies. They whisper more rituals into its seams, weaving in heraldic markers, crest signatures, tiny hooks that catch on certain surnames, even when those surnames have been legally buried. The public never hears any of this. To most staff, the Sorting Hat is still a talking antique that likes its own jokes a little too much. Even Dumbledore only half understands. He has watched it place children in ways that ruin his plans and save them in the same breath. He suspects it has evolved, that the minds of the founders have been joined by something stranger, but the Hat will not answer the questions he does not quite dare to ask. Now the line shortens. The brim is dark, but inside sight flares. One boy approaches, lightning scar bright under messy hair, pockets almost empty, carrying a letter that changed everything. The Hat does not wonder who Harry Potter is. It has already seen him as Lord, as weapon, as reformer, as martyr, as something more than any description could contain. It turns its attention not to his fear of Slytherin, not to his wish to belong, but to a single colder calculation. What will the world need him to become, no matter what he wants? Harry walks toward the stool. He looks at the Hat. Somewhere deep in the cloth, old voices stir an answer we already know. The Hat drops over his eyes like a curtain. Cloth musty and heavy. The great hall vanishes. There is only pressure on his ears, the faint scratch of thread against his forehead, the smell of dust and old magic. Ah, here you are. The voice is dry, amused, very close. It feels as if it speaks from inside his skull. Harry sits very still on the stool, fingers tight on the edges, aware of hundreds of students watching a boy who has disappeared under a piece of fabric. Plenty of courage, the Hat murmurs, tasting the word as if it is testing a coin. Reckless, perhaps, but courage all the same. And talent, yes, there you are. Raw, untrained, but bright, and a thirst to prove yourself, to show them they were wrong about you. That is interesting. It looks, in its own way, through memory instead of eyes. Cupboard, spiderwebs, a single broken soldier on a bare shelf, then flashes of green light he does not remember, the echo of his mother's scream, the cold laughter of the man who failed to kill him. Harry does not have words for any of this, but the Hat does. Ambition, it thinks, not for glory, but for escape, for safety, for a place in this world that is his. You could be great, you know. Slytherin would help you on the way to greatness. In canon, this is the moment everything bends. Harry's panic surges up, wild and desperate. Not Slytherin. Not Slytherin. Anywhere else. Please. He has been planning this escape from Privet Drive, without knowing it, hoarding every strange thing that ever happened, every whisper of the magical, and the idea of walking straight into the house Draco Malfoy bragged about feels like walking back into a prettier cupboard. The original Hat listens. It weighs his plea, respects his choice, lets personality and immediate desire tilt the scales. Gryffindor, then. Not here. This Hat is bound to a different mandate. It hears the same fear, but behind it, like a second voice, it hears something colder and older. The world's need. The threads of future battles rise around Harry like smoke. The Hat sees him in a ruined street, standing between Death Eaters and Aurors, wand raised, Parselmouth and Patronus both at his command. Serpents coiled at his feet, a silver stag blazing above him. He speaks in the language of snakes and in the language of law, binding enemies into a single unwilling truce. because he has lived among them and knows their pride from the inside. This is what you are for, the hat thinks. It turns deeper, down into blood. A faint Peverell echo, cold as grave dust and steady as stone. A buried Gryffindor claim, tangled in Potter lines, and underneath even that, something that is not a house at all. Old ward magic that recognizes him as if the castle itself once signed a letter and waited for his answer. Gringotts would call it inheritance. The hat calls it obligation. Unifier, not simple hero. Bridge, not banner. Harry's plea sharpens, not Slytherin. I don't want. You will not hide from what you are meant to mend, the voice says, and now it is no longer amused. It is iron. Choice tightens, then breaks. Better be, the hall leans forward. Hermione's hands knot in her robes. They look at each other from across the room, though he cannot see her at all. The hat draws breath, if a hat can do such a thing. Better be. Steam and sky pressed together in the glass. The countryside blurs past in strips of green and gold. Earlier that day. The Hogwarts Express, mid-morning, rattling north. Hermione Granger sits alone in a compartment near the middle of the train, knees pulled up on the seat, shoes tucked neatly beneath her. The corridor outside is full of voices and footsteps, a new world walking past her door. But in here there is only the quiet scratch of a Muggle pencil and the soft crackle of old paper. Her bench is an ordered battlefield. Second-hand robes, freshly pressed, folded over her trunk. A school cloak with the price tag from a charity shop still half torn away. A battered encyclopedia of wizarding history, its spine mended with clear tape. Open beside a stack of library books she begged out of the local council branch the moment the Hogwarts letter arrived. A pencil case, plastic, translucent blue, filled with colour-coded pencils and highlighters, red for dates, green for laws, blue for spells, yellow for anything that looks like it might be on a test. She has been planning this from the first word of Professor McGonagall's visit, from the first glimpse of the moving photographs and the careful explanation about a school for magic that had always been hidden just out of sight. She has been planning this the way other children plan birthday parties, with lists and sublists and contingency charts in the margins of her notebook. The notebook lies open now. Neat square handwriting, copied spells from every beginner's text she could find, Lumos, Alahomora, Wingardium Leviosa, each underlined twice. And threaded between them notes on the houses, Gryffindor, bravery, chivalry, Ravenclaw, wit, learning, Hufflepuff, loyalty, hard work, Slytherin, ambition, resourcefulness. Under each heading she has written possible advantages, probable academic expectations, famous alumni. Underlined 3 times, what does the sorting hat measure? No one has answered that, not in any way that satisfies her. She flips a page in the encyclopedia. Founders of Hogwarts. Godric Gryffindor, Helga Hufflepuff, Rowena Ravenclaw, Salazar Slytherin. The article is full of phrases that catch at her mind. Ancient lines, hereditary magic, blood inheritance, contested succession. She circles each one with slow, careful strokes, then adds a question mark. If magic can be inherited, what else can? Responsibility, power, destiny, It is easier to think in questions than in memories. Easier to catalogue facts than the way teachers' faces have tightened when she raised her hand too often, the way other children have rolled their eyes when she knew the answer again. Too much, they said without saying it. Too clever, too eager, too Hermione. Hogwarts, she has decided, will be different. It must be. A place that wrote to her, that sent an owl and a list and a ticket on a train that appears out of nowhere, must want her as she is. But she does not trust wanting. She trusts work. So she reads about the Sorting Hat, an artifact imbued with the minds of all four founders, capable of legilimency, of looking inside a person and knowing things they have never said aloud. Some accounts insist it listens to choice. Others hint, uneasily, that it sees further, that it places future heads of house, future ministers, future war leaders where they are needed. If that is true, then this is not just a test of who she is. It is a test of who she might become. The train sways. She looks up from the page, out through the window at fields and hedgerows and the faint wavering line of distant hills. For a moment, the glass holds her reflection over the world outside, brown eyes, too serious for 11, hair already escaping its ponytail, a girl trying to map a country she has never walked. She closes her notebook. In the quiet that follows, she lets herself imagine. A tall, airy tower lined with books, stars pressed close to the windows, Ravenclaw. Study groups that last past midnight, debates that leave her breathless and alight. Then, with a deliberate shift, she pictures the Gryffindor common room from the illustrations she has found, all red and gold and roaring fire, people laughing too loudly, daring each other into adventures. Where would she fit? Where would she stop being too much and start being exactly enough? Her breath fogs the glass. She draws a tiny question mark there with one fingertip, then whispers it into the humming air of the compartment, as if the train itself might carry the words ahead of her. Where do I do the most good? She asks. Far away, in a candlelit hall she has never seen, an old hat is already answering a different question entirely. The hall is a bowl of candlelight and breathless noise. Hermione walks beneath the bewitched ceiling with her heart thudding in her throat. The sky looks down at her, star-scattered and impossibly high, as if the whole world has come indoors to watch. When Professor McGonagall calls her name, her legs feel distant, like they belong to someone else, and she is only borrowing them for this one walk. The hat is heavier than it looks. Rough fabric brushes her curls, catches for a second, then settles. The hall vanishes. There is only the smell of dust and old magic, and then the rush comes, voices, impressions, the press of a mind that is not one mind at all. Brilliant. Something murmurs, tasting her thoughts. Disciplined. A fierce sense of justice. Oh, you have been planning this, haven't you, Miss Granger? Every book, every spell, every imagined conversation. In canon, this is the moment the hat weighs Gryffindor courage against Ravenclaw intellect. Here, the balance point shifts. The hat does not just look at who she is, it looks forward, down branching corridors of what she might become. The vision hits like a spell, a high chamber lined with books and banners the colour of clear autumn sky. Hermione stands at a long table scattered with scrolls. A quill in her hand burns with soft blue light as she rewrites a section of wizarding lore. Each stroke ripples outward through courts, through classrooms, through Gringotts ledgers and ministry edicts, until the whole system rearranges around the words she is setting down. Interesting, the hat breathes. Not only clever, architect clever. Beneath that it tastes something else. Older. A metallic tang in the blood, like cold iron and mountain wind, a pattern in her thoughts that is not learned but inherited, spiralling logic and ruthless clarity. Distant, diluted, but unmistakable. Rowena, the hat, whispers to itself. A lost thread. They thought this branch vanished when it fled into the Muggle world. How little they know. Hermione cannot hear the name, but she feels the weight of it, a pressure at the back of her mind, like a door she has not opened yet. She thinks of the letter that changed everything, of the bank where goblins weighed her coins and her future in the same cool glance, of Harry's quiet, stubborn eyes on the train. He looks at her. She looks at him. A moment of understanding passes between them in memory, more than any description could contain. The hat's mandate has changed. It has been told, by founders' oaths, by prophecies no one else remembers, to gather heirs where their thrones will be. Hermione's destiny is not simply to answer questions correctly, not simply to swing a wand bravely, but to sit at the centre of a web of knowledge and turn it, slowly and deliberately until the world follows. Not just a scholar, the hat decides. A scholar queen, the one who rebuilds from the blue banners outward. The choice snaps into place. Ravenclaw. It roars. The hall explodes into applause. Hermione flinches. For one stunned heartbeat, she is sure there has been a mistake. That was not the table she had rehearsed in her mind, not the red and gold she had quietly wrapped around herself like a story she thought she understood. She walks toward the table under the eagle banner, pulse hammering, feeling the shape of an unseen crown settling somewhere far above her. Preference, she realizes dimly, was never going to be the deciding vote. Something larger is already in motion, and she has just been seated where it intends her to rule. The next name is called before the echo of Hermione's cheering fades. Ron walks forward with his ears burning. Second-hand trunk. Second-hand wand. Hand-me-down robes that smell faintly of soap and the Burrows' kitchen. A mind full of Quidditch plays, of Chudley Cannon scores he knows by heart, of brothers' shadows stacked one on top of the other until they feel like a wall. He has been planning this moment in the loose, hopeful way only an 11-year-old can. He will be brave. He will be loud. He will sit at the Gryffindor table, and for once, when his mother's letters arrive, they will be about him. The hat drops over his eyes. The hall dissolves. The world narrows to old cloth and an older voice. Ah, another Weasley. The hat's tone is dry, familiar. I know this line. Courage, mischief, a talent for finding trouble, and loyalty. Always loyalty. Cannon would take him straight to Gryffindor on that alone. Bravery, hot and reactive, ready to flare when a friend is threatened. But this hat is not weighing who he is. It is weighing who he must become. The voice lengthens, like it is looking further than usual. Beyond school, beyond exams, beyond the easy thrill of a well-flown Quidditch match. Flashes come, sharp and disorienting. Ron standing in a circular room washed in warm light, badgers carved into wood, Hufflepuff banners drooping over armchairs, two students in different ties, green and red, shouting across a low table. Ron between them, arms spread, turning fury into a joke, insult into a shared plate of biscuits until the anger drains away. Another image, harsher. Harry beside him, older, eyes shadowed by politics and prophecy both. Whispers crawling through corridors. Potter is dangerous. Potter is unstable. Potter is a liability. A parchment on the table, an offer of distance and safety. Ron's hand hovers, then curls into a fist. He stays. Not your daring that matters, the hat murmurs. Not the headline acts, the chess games, the sacrifices everyone will remember. Your destiny is quieter. Stubborn, you hold when others break. Why Hufflepuff in a world where destiny, not preference, is the axis? Because the war will not be won only by chosen lords and ancient magic. It will turn on who refuses to look away when compromise would be easier. The house of loyalty and hard work becomes the crucible for the moral centre, and the hat sees that crucible needs a Weasley. Red hair that half the pure blood world recognizes. Cousins in Slytherin, friends in Gryffindor, a sister who will touch every side of the conflict. A family known for warmth, for stubborn decency, for never quite fitting the pure blood script, yet tied to many of its lines. Ron is a bridge in freckled skin. He looks at her. She looks at him. Across the hall, Hermione's eyes find his under the eagle banner, curious and bright. A moment of understanding passes between them, thin as a thread now, thick as a lifeline later. The hat decides. Hufflepuff. The word lands like a bludger to the stomach. For a heartbeat, all Ron can hear is the roaring in his ears. No Gryffindor glory. No following Bill, Charlie, Percy, the twins. No red and gold. Then the Hufflepuff table erupts. Not with the sharp competitive edge of Gryffindor's cheers, but with open-armed, uncomplicated warmth. Hands thump his back. Someone slides a plate toward him before he has even sat. There is room, they say without words. Sit. Eat. Be. Disappointment burns, but under it something else settles. A strange rightness, like finding a seat at a table he did not know he had been walking toward his whole life. It feels small now. Ordinary. More than any description could contain. Later, when alliances fray and ancient thrones begin to rise, the war will find that its most critical hinge is not a prophecy, but a boy who simply refused to let go. And the hat, smug in its silence, will know it placed its linchpin exactly where destiny required. The hall is held in one breath. Wooden benches. Stone walls. A ceiling that looks like the open sky but feels lower now, pressing down. Harry sits on the stool, the hat heavy and alive on his head, and time stretches thin, then thinner, until it feels like it might tear. Not Gryffindor, Harry thinks again, desperate. Anywhere but Slytherin. The hat's voice is no longer amused. It is firm now, almost solemn. You misunderstand, Mr. Potter. This is not about comfort. This is about where the world will need you. He has been planning this, Harry realizes with a small cold shock. Not Dumbledore, not Voldemort, the hat. Or whatever stands behind it. Below him the four tables blur. Red and gold, yellow and black, blue and bronze, green and silver, bright as snake scales in torchlight. He can feel eyes on him. McGonagall's mouth is a line. Dumbledore looks up, expression unreadable. Hermione, still waiting with the first years, clutches her letter from the school so tightly the parchment crumples. Harry swallows. Please, he thinks. I know what Slytherin means. You know the stories, the hat answers. Not the truth. I see bloodlines and endings, not playground tales. I see Peverell and Potter twined together, old as the first wards laid over this castle. I see a boy who will sit in judgment over light and dark and call both to heel. The seconds keep walking past them, slow and deliberate. They look at each other. A moment of understanding passes between them, strange and one-sided. Then the hat draws in a breath Harry cannot hear but can somehow feel. Slytherin. The word cracks against stone. It echoes off banners and plates and the vaulted false sky. The green and silver table erupts, chairs scraping, hands slamming the wood, a roar of surprise turning quickly, hungrily, into triumph. The other three tables freeze. Forks hang in mid-air. A goblet tips and spills pumpkin juice unnoticed. Harry's stomach drops. His legs move anyway. He walks toward the table he has feared since Hagrid first said the word on that rock in the sea. Every step feels like it belongs to someone else. A boy in a story where the hero never makes this choice. It is not punishment. The narration of the hat insists, quiet under the noise. You would have been brave anywhere. But a Gryffindor savior cannot rule Slytherin. He can only fight it. A Slytherin who has eaten at their table, slept in their rooms, listened to their whispered fears about blood and power and extinction. He might one day command their respect. He might speak their language without flinching. Harry reaches the bench. A space opens, wary and curious. Malfoy's smirk is missing its certainty. Snape looks like someone has pulled the floor out from under him and then told him to keep standing. The hat, resting now on its shelf, remembers Peverell rings sealed in Gringotts stone, remembers an older magic than houses or school songs. Sovereignty, not sorting. Thrones that once stood where no banners flew. It has seen the thin line from Ignotus's cloak to a boy with a scar and a claim he does not yet understand. Slytherin, in this future, is not about darkness. It is about power studied instead of fled, about learning how ambition bends law, how fear moves crowds, how a single signature on a bank contract can change everything. Harry sits, The wood is cold. He can feel eyes on his scar from every direction, heat and suspicion and something like hope. He looks at the empty golden plate in front of him and sees, for a heartbeat, not a meal, but a mirror. You were never meant to be just a hero, Harry. The hat's last whisper curls through his mind. You were meant to be a fulcrum. He does not yet know what or who will be balanced on him when the war truly begins. The dungeon is quieter than the hall. Quieter, but heavier. Harry steps through the stone arch and feels it at once. Cool air, a faint tang of algae, the slow, distorted shimmer of green-tinted light moving across the ceiling like the surface of a dream. Tall windows look directly into the lake. Shadows of passing fish cut the light into ribbons. Every wall is stone, damp in the corners, carved with serpents that coil around torch brackets and archways, their eyes set with dark glass that catches the light and throws it back. Low murmur. Not the roar of Gryffindor, the easy chatter of a house that assumes it belongs. This is a different kind of sound, measured and layered, pockets of students bent together, talking in tones that say, "We are listening, even when we pretend not to be." He walks further in. Sofas in dark green leather, a long table scattered with parchment, ink, a chessboard mid-game, a silver-framed notice board. It looks old, ordered, deliberate. The weight of tradition presses from every carved serpent, from the banners stitched with names he does not yet know, from the way older students glance up, assess him, and then return to their conversations as if filing away a fact for later. Draco is waiting. Of course he is. Standing near the fire, hands clasped behind his back like a prince in a portrait who has been planning this all his life. For a moment, awe flashes raw and unhidden across his face. The boy who lived, under his roof, in his colours. Then, calculation settles over it like a veil. He looks at Harry as if weighing galleons in a Gringotts scale. Ally? Trophy? Threat? Rival for influence in a house where stories become currency. Potter. Someone whispers behind Harry's shoulder. Then again, closer. Potter. The name moves through the room like a current under the lake, soft but everywhere. Harry feels the choice arrive before he has words for it. Does he walk to Draco, accept the unspoken invitation at the fire, step into the circle that already knows the rules? Or does he angle away, find an empty chair by the window, keep his back to the stone and his eyes on the water until they decide what he is? He moves. Not to the farthest corner, not to Draco's side. A chair halfway between, close enough to be approached, far enough to be choosing. He sits. The whispers adjust. Snape watches from the edge of the common room, half in shadow, black robes absorbing the green light. Outwardly, nothing changes. His face is a mask of cool disdain, the familiar curl of his lip when he looks at Harry's untidy hair, the scar, the fame. Inwardly, something lurches. Lily's eyes in slithering colours, Lily's son at his house table, under his formal care, under the same crest he once wore like armour and shame. He has been planning this year around a Potter in Gryffindor, around distance and controlled encounters, around detachment. Destiny, or Dumbledore, has just torn that plan neatly in half. Harry feels Snape's gaze like a weight between his shoulder blades. Another quiet decision, meet it, or pretend not to notice. He turns, just enough, and their eyes lock. They look at each other. A moment of understanding passes between them, thin and sharp as a blade. We are both trapped in this arrangement, and neither of us chose it. Later, in the narrow dungeon dormitory, the world shrinks to stone, and water and breath. The beds are carved dark wood, curtains a deep green that swallows light. From beyond the thick wall, he can hear the lake, a slow, muffled rush, the occasional thud of something large moving past, the creak of ancient pressure against older stone. He lies awake, staring at the underside of the canopy. The hat's words replay, tangled with Draco's measuring look and Snape's unreadable eyes, with every whispered Potter that turned his name into an object. Did the hat make a mistake, tying him to this house, these people, this Underlake silence? Or was the mistake his, trusting a talking piece of cloth and a headmaster who looks at him like a chessboard? The currents press against the walls. Sleep does not come. Somewhere above, far beyond the green light, the castle shifts, and the war he does not yet understand takes one quiet step closer. The tower is full of sky. Wind slips through the open arches, cool and thin, carrying the smell of stone and stars. Hermione steps over the threshold of the Ravenclaw common room and stops, because for a moment it is too much, too wide, too high, too beautiful. More than any description could contain. Arched windows circled the room, some flung open to the night. Beyond them, the black sweep of the grounds, the distant glitter of the lake, a scatter of constellations she half remembers from Muggle astronomy books, and half from Hogwarts a history, a domed ceiling, painted deep blue curves overhead, charmed to echo the sky outside. Lamps burn with soft, steady light. Tables. Cushioned chairs. A fireplace framed by stone carved in feathered patterns. Shelves of books lining the walls, their spines in every shade of blue and brown. Behind her, the bronze eagle knocker settles back against the door. Its voice still echoes in her mind. Which came first? The phoenix or the flame? The question had leapt at her like a puzzle in a textbook. She had answered without thinking, words tumbling out, giving not only the traditional riddle solution, but a brief explanation of cyclical causality and magical regeneration. The door had swung open. A few older students had looked at her, eyebrows raised. One had smiled. Now, that same instinct betrays her. A tall third-year boy is explaining, confidently, that the founders chose their house colours based on their favourite gemstones. Hermione, exhausted and buzzing and unable to let it go, hears herself say, "Actually, that's not quite accurate." She quotes a passage from Hogwarts, a history about heraldic symbolism, corrects his mention of Rowena's diadem, adds a footnote about medieval Scottish regalia she once read in a library book. Silence. Then a soft huff from a girl by the fire. Raised eyebrow. Small smirk. Another student, a quiet-looking prefect with ink on her fingers, gives Hermione a brief, assessing nod that is not unkind. Hermione feels heat rush to her face. She clutches her book bag closer as if it were a shield. She walks the perimeter of the room to steady herself, pretending to look at the shelves. Titles glow in the lamplight: Arithmantic Foundations, A History of Magical Thought, Wand Law, Principles and Practice. Ordinary, and yet not. This is a world where these are real, not just words on a page. Near the far wall, above a narrow stretch of bookcase, hangs an old portrait. A woman in dark blue robes, hair braided and coiled, a simple circlet resting against her brow. Rowena Ravenclaw. Hermione knows the image from illustrations, but this is different. The painted eyes track her as she moves, sharp and considering. When Hermione pauses, the portrait's gaze seems to narrow, as if weighing something only it can see. She looks at Rowena. Rowena looks at her. A moment of understanding passes between them, or perhaps Hermione only wants it to. Either way, her chest tightens. She has been planning this life for as long as she can remember, without knowing its name, reading every letter that hinted at something beyond the ordinary, every myth, every scrap of folklore, searching for proof that the magical world was real and that she might belong to it. A side corridor opens off the main room, half hidden behind a tall globe of the night sky. Curiosity tugs at her. She slips past. The noise of the common room fades. Here the air smells of dust and old ink. The shelves are narrower, the books older, no polished covers, only cracked leather and faded gilding. She runs a finger along the spines. The titles shift in a strange direction. On the ancient compacts, the Wizengamot before the statute, foundational law of magical sovereignty. Governance. Jurisdiction. Words that feel heavy. Adult. Far beyond a first year, who has not yet attended a single class. And yet she feels it, a pull low and insistent, as if these books are not merely objects but doors, and some part of her blood inheritance is already reaching for the keys. Why would a school keep texts like this in a forgotten alcove instead of a proper library section? The question lodges itself beside a dozen others that have been building since Diagon Alley, since Gringotts, since the first glimpse of how this world arranges power and pretends it is natural. She chooses one slim volume almost at random. The spine creaks. Inside, cramped handwriting annotates the margins in a sharp, elegant script. A note beside a passage on hereditary seats, exceptions may be made for dormant lines, should a rightful claimant arise. Hermione's skin prickles. She closes the book carefully and returns it to its place, as if any sudden movement might disturb something watching. Back in the main room, the fire has burned lower. First years drift toward the dormitory stairs. Prefects murmur last instructions. Hermione finds an empty window seat where the stone is cool and the view is nothing but stars and darkness and the faint outline of the forbidden forest. She takes out her notebook. Not the one for class schedules and reading lists. The other one. Plain cover. Clean pages. A Muggle ballpoint pen rolls out with it, but she sets it aside and reaches for the school-issued quill instead. The feather feels strange between her fingers, but also right, like a small, formal promise. At the top of the first page she writes, in careful block letters, things that don't make sense about the wizarding world. She pauses, listening to the quiet breathing of the tower, the faint crackle of the fire, the distant rush of wind outside. Then she begins a list. Why are Muggle-born children not informed earlier to prevent accidental magic incidents and fear? Why are there no standardized safety regulations for school potions? Why does the Ministry appear to have no written constitution? The questions spill out, one after another, about house elves and goblins and Gringotts, about blood status and trial procedures, about why a world with this much power seems so content with so much unfairness. Her hand cramps. She keeps writing. Somewhere behind her, the Rowena portrait shifts. The painted woman leans forward, just a fraction. Eyes fixed on the small, hunched figure by the window. If anyone were watching, they might say the expression is almost satisfied. Hermione does not see. She only feels the weight of the quill, the tug of the questions, the certainty that if something does not make sense, it must be possible to change it. She underlines the title once, twice, as if scoring it into the page. She looks out at the night. The night looks back, full of secrets and old laws and thrones no one has mentioned to her yet. Sleep will come late, but the list grows quickly. And on this first night in the tower, without knowing it, Hermione Granger begins to write the document that will one day be read in courtrooms and council chambers, in Wizengamot halls and on the floor of a reformed ministry, a quiet manifesto that will do something Voldemort never truly managed. It will change everything. The staircase down to Hufflepuff feels like a secret the castle is whispering to him. Low ceiling, cool stone, then a stretch of blank wall that should be nothing at all. The barrel lid swings open. Warm yellow light spills out, soft and round and utterly unlike the sharp banners and soaring arches he imagined when he thought of Hogwarts. Ron climbs through and stops, because the room on the other side is more than any description could contain. Round doorways curve away like rabbit holes. Plants sit on every surface, fat green leaves, trailing vines, little pots with flowers that turn their heads when he walks past. The air smells of earth and yeast and something sweet, like fresh bread just pulled from an oven. No marble, no grand staircase, just low comfortable sofas, knitted blankets, copper kettles humming on a sideboard. He realizes with a small shock that his shoulders have dropped. He hadn't known how tight they were until now. He has been planning this year in half-formed daydreams, glory on the Quidditch pitch, daring rescues, finally being the Weasley who does something that gets written down in a history book. None of those daydreams looked like this. What looks back at him, though, is stranger still. The first boy to wave him over has a name that sounds old pureblood, the kind his mother mutters about at the kitchen table. The girl beside him mentions a Muggle primary school without lowering her voice. On the rug, a first year with carefully plaited hair is teaching a freckled boy how to shuffle a deck of exploding snap cards. One has parents in the Department of Mysteries. The other's dad fixes boilers. Ron waits for the questions, for the weighing and measuring. Which side is your family on? What do you know about Harry Potter? Where do the Weasleys stand? Instead, an older prefect just claps him on the shoulder, easy as anything, and says, "Kettle's always on." "You like treacle tart?" He blinks, nods. Somehow, that seems to be enough. In a world where the hat sorts by destiny, not by the loudest trait in an 11-year-old's head, this room is something else entirely. It is neutral ground, engineered. A place where lines can cross without snapping. The hat has been seeding it carefully for decades. Future mediators, ward healers, logisticians. The quiet kind of strategist who notices who is sitting alone. Ron, as the Weasley in this mix, is not an accident. He has been planning this, the hat thought, even if Ron does not know it yet. Later, as he reaches for a still warm roll, he hears it. 2 7th years by the bookcase. Voices low, but not secretive. "Everyone underestimates us," one says, half smiling. "They forget who keeps the castle running when things go wrong." The other snorts. "Good, let them. Easier to move pieces when no one's watching the board." Pattern interrupt. The word board lodges in Ron's mind like a chess piece set down with care. Overlooked might mean invisible. Invisible might mean safe, or at least safer, when house politics start to burn. He finds himself at a round table, jam on his plate, steam on his glasses, someone telling a story about a plant that bit a Slytherin's shoes. He laughs, real and helpless, and for a heartbeat the sound surprises him. He looks around. No one is comparing him to Bill or Charlie or the twins. No one is waiting for him to be a joke. He feels it as a jolt, sharp and clean. This is the first time he hasn't felt like just another Weasley. They look at each other, these strangers who are suddenly not quite strangers, and a moment of understanding passes between them that he can't yet name. Under warm yellow light, with bread in his hands and soil under his nails from a curious plant, Ron Weasley begins to grow into the quiet centre the war will one day turn around. The hall is louder than it should be for this early in the term. Voices overlap, banners stir in a draft that isn't there, and somewhere under it all the hat is very, very pleased with itself. September 1991. First week of term. Hogwarts is still adjusting. The changes are subtle at first, like someone has shifted the weight of the castle a few inches to the left. Slytherin fills with the usual green and silver, the usual old names, but there is a new current under the polished surface. Not just ambitious purebloods, but children the hat has marked as future power brokers. The girl who will one day chair a Visengamot committee. The boy whose signature will end 3 blood feuds. The quiet half-blood who will design the wards that replace Azkaban. And Harry Potter, who looks down the table and does not yet know he has been placed among future ministers and kingmakers. Across the hall, Ravenclaw's benches look the same. Ink-stained fingers, books propped against pitchers of pumpkin juice, but the pattern has changed. The hat has stacked the table with lawmakers and innovators, with minds that will draft treaties and rewrite magical theory. Hermione sits among them, quill already out, questions already forming. She can feel it in the way conversations spiral into policy and principle, in the way an older girl casually mentions Gringotts regulations over toast. They think they are just clever. The Hat knows better. Gryffindor, missing Harry's scar and Hermione's hand in the air certainty, narrows into something sharper. The bravest, yes, but also those who will stand on the front lines when the world burns. Future Auras, dragon handlers, the sort of people who run toward giants. The common room grows a little louder, a little more physical, more daring, less strategy, more charge. He has been planning this, the Hat thinks, with 4 founders' voices braided in its seams. And Hufflepuff becomes the quiet hinge. With Ron at its centre, with his Weasley letters and his easy way of talking across tables, the house starts to collect the coalition builders. He walks between groups without thinking about it, bringing a Slytherin chess prodigy to a Ravenclaw arithmancy discussion, dragging a shy Gryffindor into a herbology study circle. Soon, the Hufflepuff table is where cross-house study groups simply happen, where gossip and homework and tentative political arguments mix under yellow hangings. Early ripples spread quickly. In Slytherin, Draco Malfoy feels his status bend the moment Harry laughs at a joke that wasn't his. Influence is a fragile thing. Having the boy who lived at the same table turns every look into a calculation. In Ravenclaw, Hermione's intensity becomes a topic of whispered commentary. Too many questions, too much reading, as if there could be such a thing. In Hufflepuff, Ron's last name opens doors. Older students who would never have walked into the basement now wander in for chess, for biscuits, for news from Arthur Weasley's desk at the Ministry. Piece by piece, the Hat has pre-sorted the war. Generals to Gryffindor, diplomats and spies to Slytherin, scholars and legislators to Ravenclaw, logisticians and bridge builders to Hufflepuff, all placed where they can grow into roles no one has named yet. He looks at her. She looks at him. A moment of understanding passes between them in the Great Hall one evening. This is bigger than homework, bigger than classes, though they cannot see its full shape more than any description could contain. At breakfast, from the enchanted ceiling's point of view, the 4 house tables are neat lines of colour: red, green, blue, yellow. Students lean in, argue, laugh, plot. The banners hang like standards in a campaign not yet declared. From above, they look less like children at breakfast and more like pieces on a chessboard the Hat has already arranged for an endgame only it can see. The office is too quiet. The portraits pretend to sleep. Night has settled over Hogwarts by the time Dumbledore dismisses the last of the staff and climbs the moving staircase alone. Candles gutter as he passes. The gargoyle closes its stone jaws behind him with a sound like a verdict. His robes whisper over the steps. He has been planning this year for a very long time, and yet tonight the castle feels as if it is planning something back. Fawkes dozes on his golden perch, head tucked under one wing, feathers dimmed to embers. The Sorting Hat rests on a high shelf, brim sagging, seams faintly pulsing with residual magic, like the last heartbeat of a spell not entirely spent. The rest of the room is an inventory of his responsibilities, silver instruments ticking and humming, a cabinet of memories, a neat stack of parchment bearing the names of every new student and the houses that now claim them. He walks to the desk, sits, puts on his half-moon glasses with deliberate care. The list is short, the ink still fresh. Harry Potter, Slytherin. Hermione Granger, Ravenclaw. Ronald Weasley, Hufflepuff. 3 lines, 3 decisions. They look like ordinary assignments, the sort he has read every September for decades. They do not feel ordinary. He has been planning this too. A Gryffindor boy with his mother's eyes, flanked by loyal friends, shaped by courage, sacrifice, and the easy camaraderie of the red and gold table. A centre of gravity he could nudge, not command, toward the light. Instead, the fault lines have shifted. The boy he meant to anchor in Gryffindor now sits beneath green and silver banners, between children raised on stories of blood and power. The brilliant Muggle-born girl whose letters to Hogwarts were so earnest now belongs to blue and bronze, where questions sharpen into weapons. The youngest Weasley son, meant to be Harry's mirror in scarlet, has been set among the Badgers, where loyalty hardens into something slower, deeper, more stubborn than glory. It feels too deliberate to be coincidence. He looks up at the hat. It looks back in its own way, cloth and thread and something older. He rises, crosses the room, lifts it down. The fabric is warm against his fingers, humming with a magic he did not weave and no longer fully understands. "Why Slytherin for Harry?" he asks quietly. The hat stirs. A slow ripple along the brim, as if considering whether to answer at all. "Balance," it murmurs at last. "Crowns claimed and crowns refused. Debts older than your ministry, older than your wars. Serpents must coil where lions once slept. Or the board will tip and the game will end before it begins." Dumbledore waits. That is all it offers. He would like to argue. To remind it of prophecy, of Horcruxes, of how much he has already placed on this boy's narrow shoulders. He would like to say that he knows this world, that he has seen everything it can do to a child. But the hat only sags into silence, seems dimming, as if the question itself has already been asked too late. He returns it to the shelf, walks to the window. Outside, the grounds lie dark and watchful. The lake is a sheet of black glass. Hagrid's hut is a small, warm dot at the edge of the forest. In the distance, the faintest glimmer from the Slytherin common room far below, mirrored by a pale glow from Ravenclaw Tower and a softer, earthier light from the Hufflepuff basement. Points of colour on a vast, invisible grid. If the hat is sorting by destiny now, not merely by personality, then he is no longer the primary player he once believed himself to be. He is a piece. A powerful one, perhaps, but a piece all the same, moved by rules he did not write and cannot repeal. For the first time in many years, the realization is not grand or tragic. It is simply humbling. He presses his palm to the cold glass, watching the dark. Somewhere under that roof, Harry Potter sleeps among serpents, and the future bends along a line Dumbledore cannot yet see. He has been planning this war for half a century. Tonight, the board has moved without his hand, and in the quiet, with the hat's last pulse of magic fading behind him, he cannot help but wonder who or what is playing a longer game than his. The common room is dim and green and watching. Torchlight bends through water, throws moving shadows over stone and silver. First Slytherin house meeting of the year. First with Harry Potter sitting under the serpent banners. Snape stands at the front, arms folded, black robes hanging like a curtain between him and the room. He speaks of rules, expectations, the honour of their house. His voice is smooth, controlled, each word measured. But when he says you represent Slytherin to the rest of the school, his gaze catches on one face. A fraction too long. The scar, the eyes, Lily's eyes. Then the mask drops back into place. Try not to embarrass us, Mr. Potter. A few students smirk. Harry's jaw tightens. He looks back at Snape, not flinching, not looking away first. They look at each other. A moment of understanding passes between them, though neither could name it yet. Resentment. Curiosity. A shared awareness that this is not how the world was meant to look. Later, when the room has emptied, Snape walks the quiet corridors toward his office. The echo of their whispered questions follows him. Why is Potter here? Why would the Hat give us him? He has been planning this year for months, revising his protections, his reports to Dumbledore, his cover with the Death Eaters, and in every version Harry Potter wore red and gold and stayed at a distance. Now the boy sleeps in his house. Within reach, within danger. Snape knows the Hat. He wore it once, felt it scratch along his thoughts, heard it murmur of paths and power. If it is seeing further now, if destiny itself has bent, then someone has changed the rules of the game. Did Dumbledore intend this? He doubts it. The old man looked almost startled at the table. That alone is unsettling. So Snape begins to test the new pattern. In class, he is harsher with Harry than with any other Slytherin, docking points for the slightest hesitation, slicing through answers with sarcasm sharp enough to make the rest of the house wary. Yet when older students circle, when a boy with a dark-marked father moves too close, a quiet word, a redirected detention, a sudden assignment keeps Harry elsewhere. Pattern interrupt. Third week, a Saturday morning. Snape finds Harry in the library, cornered between shelves by two ambitious second years, asking pointed questions about his Gringotts visit, about blood inheritance and old families. Snape appears as if by accident, assigns them all an essay on bezoars, and later, in the corridor, steers Harry away from the staircase that leads down to a certain common room gathering. You will find more useful allies in the classroom than in parlour games, Potter. Try to remember that. He says it like an insult. Harry hears it like a warning. In the privacy of his quarters, night deep outside the windows, Snape unlocks a drawer and takes out a small, faded photograph. Lily by the lake, wind in her hair, laughing at something just out of frame. He looks at her. She looks at him. More than any description could contain lives in that thin square of paper. What are they turning you into, Potter? He whispers to the empty room, to the girl in the photograph, to the unseen Hat that has rewritten his life. The question hangs there heavier than any vow, and the war shifts again around a boy sleeping beneath green and silver. The library is almost dark and full of breathing. Shelves loom like sleeping giants, the air thick with dust and ink, and the faint metallic tang of old spells. Somewhere far below, the castle shifts its weight, stone murmuring against stone. September 1991. Ravenclaw Tower's private annex, half an hour past curfew. Hermione Granger sits alone at a long table, ringed by books like a fortification. One candle, guttering. One roll of parchment already filled with cramped, neat notes. One enormous, leather-bound volume open in front of her, Lineages of the Four, a provisional catalogue of founder descendants. The title alone had been enough to make her heart jump. She has been planning this without quite admitting it to herself, pulling every reference to Hogwarts history, every stray mention of the founders, every footnote about recognized lines from the shelves. Building a quiet map of a world that still does not quite know what to do with a Muggle-born in blue and bronze. Now the map has a centre. This book. She traces the genealogical charts with the tip of her quill. Names flow down from Godric, Helga, Salazar, Rowena in elegant black branches, crossing, dividing, thickening through the centuries. Some branches end in neat notes, line extinguished, merged with house so-and-so. Others do something stranger. They simply stop, a name, a date, and then a blank white stretch where there should be children, marriages, more ink. Disappeared into the Muggle world, one cramped annotation mutters beside a broken Ravenclaw line. Another, unregistered issue, presumed squib or non-magical. Hermione frowns. The word non-magical still feels like a bruise when she sees it in these books, as if the entire world has been divided into two columns and she was only barely allowed to step across. She turns a page. More charts. More gaps. It should be simple, she thinks. Magic either matters or it doesn't. But the parchment in front of her says something else, something slippery, that power can hide, that blood can go quiet for generations, that the world can forget the very people it owes its castles to. At the bottom of a dense commentary section, her eye catches on a phrase. Small print, nearly lost between citations. On the matter of blood inheritance declarations, she leans closer. The paragraph is a knot of archaic language, half Latin, half legal formula, talking about lost heirs, ritual reclamation of style and property, the awakening of dormant rights by magical proof of descent. Blood inheritance. The words look back at her. She copies the heading once, then again, slower. If a line can vanish into the Muggle world and then be called back by some ritual, who decides when that happens? Who chooses which child in which ordinary house gets told that, actually, everything is different? You belong to an ancient name, an old vault, a forgotten throne. She thinks of Harry at Gringotts, the way his eyes had gone distant when the goblin spoke of old houses and older magic. He has been planning this, she realizes now, not the titles perhaps, but the escape. The claim to something that explains why the world has hurt him so much. Hermione has no such story, no ring, no bank account older than her parents' dental practice, only a sorting that put her in Ravenclaw and a handful of looks that said, politely, that she did not quite belong there. Clever, yes, but not the right kind of clever. The idea that blood might secretly matter more than merit makes her stomach twist. It is unfair, irrational, everything she wants to fight, and yet the paragraph will not let her go. Because if magic itself is built on these buried promises, then fighting them means understanding them first. She pulls her notebook closer, copies the paragraph word for word, ink scratching steadily, underlines blood inheritance declarations 3 times until the paper thins. In the margin she writes, very small and very clear, if real, this changes everything. The candle flickers. Somewhere in the castle, a hat that sees more than any description could contain shifts on its shelf. Listening. The hall is bright and cold and full of watching. Silver and green. Quiet knives of attention. September settles over the Slytherin table like a mist. Harry sits halfway down, back to the wall the way Moody's book advised, toast untouched, a cup of tea cooling by his hand. Draco Malfoy talks as if he owns the air. Blaise Zabini stirs his porridge without looking up, listening to everything. So, Potter, Draco says lightly, buttering a roll he does not eat. My father says the ministry's in chaos. All these Muggleborns, all these experiments. What do you think? The pause around Muggleborns is deliberate, a test wrapped in politeness. Harry feels the table lean toward him. Not bodies, just attention. He has been planning this, in a way, since the hat whispered Slytherin and showed him futures like sharp-edged mirrors. He chooses his words the way Snape slices ingredients. Precise, controlled. I think chaos is dangerous, he says. For everyone. The ministry should probably spend less time on experiments and more on protecting people. Draco's eyes narrow, assessing. Not an answer about blood, an answer about order. Blaise's mouth tilts the smallest almost smile. Across from Harry, a girl he has not noticed before looks up from her schedule. She is slight, dark-haired, ink smudge on her thumb, a prefect badge catching the light. The surname on her timetable, half-folded, reads Vance. He files it away. She looks at him. She looks at Draco. A moment of understanding passes between them that Draco does not share. Draco tries again. And Dumbledore? My father says he's gone. Soft, all this Muggle protection nonsense. The boy's tone is airy, but his gaze is sharp. Around them, cutlery clinks, owls swoop, the castle pretends not to listen. Harry thinks of a giant with a pink umbrella, of a letter that dragged him out of a cupboard into a world that was both miracle and lie. Of Gringotts, Stone, and goblins who knew more about his blood inheritance than he did. He thinks of a headmaster who left him there. He lets that anger cool into something usable. I think Dumbledore is powerful, Harry says slowly, and when someone that powerful makes mistakes, everyone pays. So I'd like to know why he does what he does. It is not praise, it is not condemnation, it is interest. In Slytherin, interest can be more unsettling than insult. The Vance girl's quill pauses. She nods, once, very small. Solidarity. Not showy, the way a ward hums just under hearing. On the far edge of the bench, a boy Harry's age with a Muggle-style watch and second-hand robes shifts closer, as if Harry's answer has given him permission to exist. The destiny hat did not put him here to drown him in prejudice. It put him here to teach him the language of power and the art of not saying everything you know. To make him fluent in compromise without surrender, in how influence walks the room before anyone raises a wand. If he is to pull Slytherin away from Voldemort, he must first understand why they ever walked toward him. Draco leans back, dissatisfied but wary. Interesting view, he says. We'll have to talk more about it. So do I, Harry answers, and lets the words mean 3 different things. He looks at the faces along the table, the open scorn, the careful masks, the quiet fringe who are listening for a different kind of future. In this house, he realizes, bravery will not look like charging a troll. It will look like this, holding his ground over breakfast while every sentence is a blade, knowing that one wrong word could make him an enemy or worse, a pawn, and speaking anyway. The candles tremble before anyone understands why. A shiver along the enchanted ceiling, a breath of cold that cuts through roast meat and pumpkin spice. Halloween feast. First term, the hall is bright and loud, the smell of pumpkin pasties and spiced cider hanging over 4 long tables that are not truly 4 anymore. Not in the way they were meant to be. Harry sits among Slytherins whose names are old as the stones, pretending to taste his food while his mind replays the morning like a legal argument he has been planning this whole time. He looks at the faces along the table, then up at the staff days. Dumbledore is laughing at something Flitwick has said. Quirrell is hunched, twitchy, fingers worrying his turban. Harry files it away. Pattern, detail, motive. In this world, he has learned danger rarely announces itself. It does tonight. The doors slam open. Quirrell staggers in, pale and sweating, the smell of damp stone and something fouler clinging to his robes. Troll, he gasps. In the dungeons. Thought you ought to know. He collapses. The hall erupts. Benches scrape. Someone screams. Dumbledore's wand cracks like a judge's gavel. Silence. The word is a spell. Prefects. Lead your houses. Slytherin and Hufflepuff to the dungeons. Ravenclaw and Gryffindor to the towers. No one is to wander. The new arrangement turns the flow of students into crossing currents. Green and yellow surge one way, red and blue another. Lines form, nervous, shuffling. Harry rises with Slytherin, heart already calculating routes, stairwells, weak points in the castle's logic. High above, in the Ravenclaw tower, Hermione sits alone on her bed, a book open but unread. The day has been a slow, grinding humiliation. Older students rolling their eyes as she corrects a misquoted charm, a 7th year making a joke about the muggle who thinks she knows everything. Her answers in class had been perfect. That had not helped. She hears the feast begin below, hears laughter muffled by stone, and does not go down. In the Hufflepuff line, Ron walks with his head low. He can still hear his own voice from that afternoon, mocking, joining in, because it was easier to laugh at the girl who raised her hand too much than to admit he had not done the reading. The guilt sits in his stomach heavier than any pudding. Halfway to the dungeon stair, Harry catches a whisper behind him. Granger never came to the feast. A Ravenclaw prefect is telling Professor Flitwick at the edge of the chaos. She said she'd study. Upper floors. Empty corridors. A troll in the dungeons that in panic will not respect boundaries. His Slytherin instincts sketch the worst-case scenario in 3 strokes: isolated targets, slow response, plausible deniability. His Gryffindor heart, the piece the hat weighed and set aside for later, flares hot. He stops walking. Ron stops too, 3 students back, then pushes out of the Hufflepuff line before he can lose his nerve. Harry, he hisses, dodging a prefect's hand. Potter. He reaches him near a pillar, breathless, freckles stark against his pale face. They look at each other. A moment of understanding passes between them. "It was my fault," Ron blurts. Hermione. "I said things. We all did. She's alone, and there's a troll, and..." His voice cracks. "We have to fix it." Harry studies him, quick, clinical, the way he might study a Gringotts contract or a blood inheritance clause. Cowardice would be safer. Loyalty is more dangerous. "You're leaving your house line," Harry says softly. "You know that? So are you," Ron fires back, surprising himself. There is a thin, wry edge to it. Not quite humour, something like courage. Unless Slytherins only help people when there's a bank involved. Harry's mouth twitches. "Come on," he says. Decision made. He turns against the stream, Ron at his side, and they walk fast, cutting through side passages Harry has already mapped in his head, climbing instead of descending. Stone grows colder. The noise of the hall fades behind them. On the 3rd floor, the air changes. A sour, meaty stench creeps along the corridor. They slow. The torches burn lower here, shadows long and warped across the flagstones. They turn a corner. Ahead, a vast, lumbering shadow sways against the wall, club-dragging. It looms over a half-open bathroom door. From inside comes a thin, terrified voice, echoing off tile and porcelain, calling for help. Hermione. Harry's hand tightens on his wand. Ron's breath catches. The troll's silhouette shifts, turning toward the sound, and then, for one suspended heartbeat, everything holds still. For that suspended heartbeat, the corridor holds its breath with them. Stone, torchlight, dust motes hanging in the air like they are waiting to see what Harry will do. Then the troll grunts and shoves at the door. Wood splinters. Hermione screams. Harry moves. He doesn't think. He slots into the cold, clear place he has been planning this for every night since he first walked into this castle and realized how many ways it could kill people. He sprints forward, Ron on his heels, and his mind is already mapping angles, lines of sight, exits, the way a Slytherin thinks when the world is a board and pieces can break. They burst into the bathroom. Shattered sinks, cracked tiles. Hermione pressed against the far wall, white-faced, wand clutched but useless in fingers that shake. The troll turns toward her. "Oi, Granite Brain!" Harry's voice cracks across the room. The creature pauses, slow thoughts grinding. Harry steps sideways, drawing its gaze, every instinct screaming that this is mad. "Yeah, you. Over here. Bet you couldn't hit a wall if it fell on you." It roars, confused, then enraged. Good. He wants confused. Confused things are easier to move. He looks at her. She looks at him. Hermione's eyes flick from his face to the troll's posture, to the club, to the low, thick skull. A dozen diagrams from textbooks flash through her mind: leverage, balance, center of gravity. She drags in a breath that tastes of stone dust and fear. The joints. She calls, voice shaking but precise. Its knees, its wrists unsteady, Harry. Keep it turning, don't let it plant its feet. Ron has not moved from the doorway, not because he is frozen, but because he is holding the line. Hufflepuff steadiness. He knows, in a way deeper than rules or house points, that you do not abandon your friends. Not when they need you. Not ever. He swallows, raises his wand, and aims not at the troll, but at the club. It is heavy, rough, the kind of object that should be impossible to shift. All the more reason to try. Wingardium Leviosa. The word leaves him in a low, firm tone. No flourish, no panic, just trust. He trusts the spell. He trusts Hermione's mind. He trusts Harry's reckless, terrifying courage more than any school rule. The club twitches, then lifts, smoother than in any classroom. Ron's magic holds it steady, teeth gritted, arm trembling as the weight drags at the charm. The troll blinks in stupid surprise, feeling the absence, but not understanding. Higher. Hermione gasps. Then drop it. On the back of the head, not the skull plate. It's thicker there. Pattern interrupt. A sink tears free of the wall as the troll swings at Harry and misses. Porcelain explodes where he stood a heartbeat ago. Shards skitter across the floor. One slices his cheek. Warm blood. Sharp air. More than any description could contain. Harry pivots, driving the creature to turn, to overreach, to keep its feet wrong, just as Hermione said. He has been planning this without words. Misdirection, insult, movement. The Slytherin art of making someone look where you want, not where the danger is. Now, Ron. Hermione cries. Ron lets go. The club drops like a felled tree. It cracks against the softer part of the troll's skull with a sickening sound. The creature sways once, eyes rolling, then crashes forward. The floor jumps under the impact. Dust rains from the ceiling. Silence. Then 3 ragged breaths. They look at each other. Hermione's legs give out first. She slides down the wall, laughing once, a wild, disbelieving sound. Harry stumbles toward her, then stops, as if suddenly aware of how close he came to being pulp on the tiles. Ron just leans against the doorframe, wand still raised, as if lowering it might let the danger stand back up. The door slams open again. Professor McGonagall, lips thin, eyes blazing. Professor Snape, robes billowing, gaze like a hooked knife that takes in Harry first, then Ron, then Hermione. Professor Flitwick, small and sharp and horrified at the shattered room, the unconscious troll, the 3 children in the centre of it all. McGonagall looks at Hermione as if she has aged 10 years in 1 minute. Miss Granger, she says, voice brittle with fear under the anger. What were you? Hermione opens her mouth, then closes it. She knows the rules. She also knows who walked into danger for her. Snape's attention pins Harry. There is fury there, yes, but also something like reluctant respect. A Slytherin first year who baited a mountain troll and lived. Potter, he says softly, dangerous as a drawn wand explain. Harry swallows. He could talk about tactics, about angles, about how he saw the troll's slow eyes and knew he could pull it where he wanted. But the words that come out are simpler. Hermione needed help. Flitwick's gaze shifts to Ron, to the still hovering trace of magic in the air where the club fell. He knows spell work when he sees it. Controlled levitation under pressure. Mr. Weasley, he says, voice oddly gentle, that was very advanced casting. Ron flushes, ducking his head. Didn't think about it, sir. Just did it. 3 professors, 3 houses, each seeing their own student first, then forced to see the others. McGonagall sees a Ravenclaw witch applying textbook diagrams to chaos. Snape sees a Slytherin boy using misdirection like a blade. Flitwick sees a Hufflepuff who held his nerve when it mattered. It is, all of them know, deeply irregular. Detention is assigned, points are lost and then, awkwardly, given. Warnings are delivered in sharp, hushed tones as they are escorted back through the corridors. But beneath the reprimands, something else has settled in the professor's eyes. The awareness that the houses are not as separate as the tables in the Great Hall suggest. Later, when the adults have gone and the castle has swallowed their footsteps, the 3 of them end up in a side corridor. Alone. The torches burn low. The stones feel warmer than they should. Harry leans back against the wall, the cut on his cheek throbbing. Hermione stands opposite, arms wrapped around herself, replaying every movement, every spell, cataloguing mistakes and victories alike. Ron slides down to sit on the floor between them, knees up, hands dangling. No one speaks for a long moment. He looks at her. She looks at him. Then both of them look at Ron. A moment of understanding passes between them about fear, about choice, about the fact that each of them, from a different house, stepped toward danger instead of away from it. Next time, Hermione says quietly, we plan first. Harry huffs something that might be a laugh. You think there'll be a next time? Ron stares at the ceiling. With our luck? He mutters. Yeah, they do not know everything the Sorting Hat saw when it pressed against their minds. They do not know about thrones or wars or ancient magic waiting like a sealed vault in Gringotts. But they know this. When the castle tried to break one of them, all 3 stood. Whatever the hat sorted for, it has tied their fates together now, as surely as any blood inheritance ritual or oath. And somewhere deep in the stone and shadow of Hogwarts, that feels less like an accident and more like a plan. The classroom is dark and full of chalk dust ghosts. Hours after curfew, after the last lantern in the corridor has been dimmed, Hermione eases the door shut behind them, 1 desk near the front. 3 chairs dragged close together. Her satchel on the wood. Her hands careful, almost ceremonial, as she opens it. Harry looks at her. She looks at him. There is ink on her fingers and a tension in her shoulders that has been building since the sorting. I didn't want to show you in the common room, she says. Her voice is low but burning. Or the library. Too many years. She pulls out a folded piece of parchment, thicker than ordinary school paper, edged with the faint shimmer of old magic. This was in my things the first night. It wasn't there when I packed. I would know. Harry's stomach tightens. A letter that appears on its own. That feels familiar in the worst way. She lays it flat. 3 lines. No greeting, no signature. The script is formal, almost archaic. Preliminary blood inheritance declaration complete. Ravenclaw Dagworth line confirmed. Further claims sealed by Hogwarts Charter until majority or coronation. Ron squints at the words, then at her. That sounds like something from Gringotts, he says slowly. But Hogwarts doesn't do bank paperwork. It isn't paperwork, Hermione whispers. It's a result. And if the castle is issuing blood inheritance notes, then the sorting wasn't just about personality. It knew something about me I didn't. Harry swallows. The Hat's voice is suddenly very loud in his memory, not just Slytherin, not just ambition. Crowns. Balance. A boy between worlds. It said strange things in my head, he admits. About crowns and holding more than one house together. About being a bridge. And when Dumbledore looked at me afterwards, it wasn't just surprise. He looked unsettled, like he has been planning this, but the pieces moved on their own. Ron shifts, restless. Mum's told us stories, he says. Old, pure blood tales. Families that used to call themselves sacred. Seats older than the Wizengamot. Hidden thrones. Old titles the ministry pretends don't exist anymore because it makes everything simpler on parchment. He gives a short, humourless huff. Doesn't stop people from acting like those thrones are still there. Mind you, Hermione's eyes flick back to the parchment, then to Harry, then to Ron. A moment of understanding passes between them. If the Hat is sorting by destiny, she says slowly, and it can see bloodlines like this, then it might be placing heirs where they're needed, not where they fit. Guarding claims. Hiding them in plain sight. Harry thinks of Slytherin's table, of eyes on his scar, of how the Hat pressed on that word, balance. So there could be other claims, he says. Lines we don't know we carry, maybe even ours, and people who would rather we never find out. Ron nods, face pale but stubborn. If there are old thrones buried under all this, he mutters, someone's sitting on them already, or planning to. The castle creaks around them, ancient and listening. Hermione draws a breath. Should we find out who we really are? They look at each other. Harry nods first. Then Ron. Quiet. Simple, a pact, sealed without wands or oaths, but with something more than any description could contain. Outside, the corridors sleep. Inside this small circle of lamplight, the real war begins to change shape. The castle sleeps. The Hat does not. High above the common rooms and dormitories, beyond stone and storm and the reach of any wand, its consciousness unspools. Not in words, in threads, lines of light and shadow twisting through darkness like a living tapestry. Each strand a bloodline, each knot a choice it has already made. He has been planning this, though planning is not quite the word. The Hat remembers. It remembers so fiercely that memory turns into map, and map turns into something like design. In that inner space, 4 figures stand at the center of the weave, not as portraits, as impressions. Gryffindor's broad shoulders and battle-scarred hands. Ravenclaw's keen, measuring eyes. Hufflepuff's steady weight like fertile earth after rain. Slytherin's thin smile that never quite reaches his gaze. They confer without moving their mouths. Old arguments, circling forever. Around them flashes, a boy with wild black hair trembling on a stool, a girl with ink-stained fingers whispering please not Slytherin. A red-headed child whose loyalty burns so bright it bends the pattern around him. Hundreds more. Thousands. Every sorting layered over every other, until time feels less like a river and more like a stacked deck of cards. What most of the world never knows, the hat was never meant to be only a house-dividing trinket. Over centuries, steeped in oaths and crowns and the quiet desperation of parents, it has become custodian of older things. Thrones no one speaks of in the Great Hall. Gryffindor's martial crown, bound to those who will lead in war whether they want to or not. Ravenclaw's scholar throne, a sovereignty of thought and law. Slytherin's dominion over serpents and secrets, a right to command what crawls beneath the surface. Hufflepuff's stewardship of the land itself, the wards, the fields, the bones of Britain. The hat tracks their heirs the way a banker at Gringotts tracks vaults, ledger upon ledger, names, traits, convergences. It watches for the moment a blood inheritance wakes in a child's veins, then nudges. A whisper here, a delay there, a single word pressed like a seal into a frightened mind. Sometimes it pushes an heir toward power. Sometimes it hides them, burying a crown in an unexpected house, letting the world forget until the world is safe. If it can be made safe. Tonight the inner ledger glows brighter than it has in 100 years. 2 entries pulse like fresh ink. Harry James Potter. Marked convergence. Gryffindor's courage, yes, but also Slytherin's cunning coiled like a sleeping snake, and beneath both the cold, clean line of Peverell death magic. A boy who walks between endings and beginnings. A possible bridge. A possible weapon. Hermione Jean Granger. Marked re-emergence. The hat follows her thread back, past Muggle suburbs and dentists and ordinary school reports, into a broken branch of Ravenclaw's tree. Lost in plague, in secrecy, in the quiet erasures of time. Her mind looks like a storm of runes and clauses, capable of rewriting law itself, if given parchment and patience. He looks at her. She looks at him. Not with eyes, with the echo of their thoughts still ringing in its brim. A moment of understanding passes between them across that inner space, fragile but real. Previous heirs it buried. Slipped her would-be queen of scholars into Hufflepuff, where she could heal and never rule. Hid a serpent lord in Ravenclaw, turning his hunger into books instead of conquest. Each time the world survived, barely. This time the threads are tighter, darker. Voldemort's line gnaws at the edge of the tapestry. Dumbledore's choices pull in the opposite direction. The next war will not merely scorch a generation, it will crack the foundations the founders died to lay. The Hat considers. Centuries of caution weigh against a single terrible clarity. No more hiding. It seals the decision into its seams. These thrones will be claimed. Harry will not be allowed to remain only a symbol. Hermione will not be allowed to remain only a student. Together they will be placed where crowns can find them, or where crowns will be forced to follow. The castle creaks again. Somewhere below, two children lie awake, staring at stone ceilings and imagining futures they do not yet have words for. The Hat watches the threads tighten around them and wonders, not for the first time, whether even it has underestimated what is coming next. The third-floor corridor smells of dust and old decisions. Weeks earlier, the shift began quietly. A jest at the Slytherin table about the boy who lived in the wrong house. A whispered name. You know who, spoken with a kind of hungry awe that Gryffindor common rooms never hear. Harry listens. He has been planning this without quite knowing it, collecting fragments, pure-blood cousins boasting about cursed vaults, Draco repeating his father's complaints about Dumbledore hiding dangerous artifacts in a school. In this version of first year, the rumours reach him sooner and cut deeper. Slytherin is a house built on memory. They know which families backed Voldemort, which artifacts disappeared when he fell, which corridors are supposed to be avoided because the headmaster is keeping something there again. When a nervous Hufflepuff mentions a three-headed dog on the forbidden floor, Harry already has context. Malfoy's offhand line about Gringotts being breached, about something moved the same day. Hermione, in Ravenclaw Tower, attacks the question from the other side. She walks the spiral stairs with an armful of books, looks out over a world of lit windows and thinks in systems. The Ravenclaw prefects show her the older locked stacks faster. They assume she belongs there. She does. Nicholas Flamel is not a chance discovery over Christmas chocolate frogs this time, but a name she drags out of an alchemical index, cross-referenced with a thin, dust-choked volume on experimental protections. She charts properties of the Philosopher's Stone on parchment, building a list of what Dumbledore might do to guard it. Ron moves differently in Hufflepuff. Less overshadowed, more central. The house's easy neutrality becomes his map. He plays chess with the Slytherin second year who lets slip that Snape has been seen limping away from the third floor. He shares biscuits with a Gryffindor who swears McGonagall vanished behind a locked door there. He listens to a Ravenclaw complaining about Flitwick's sudden interest in complex charms. Piece by piece, he sketches a pattern of teachers and tasks without ever looking like he is investigating anything at all. Pattern interrupt. It is not courage that sends them through the trapdoor. It is strategy. Fluffy falls asleep to music as before. But even there, the dynamic has shifted. Hermione's Ravenclaw precision times the spell. Ron's Hufflepuff steadiness keeps his hands from shaking on the harp strings. Harry drops through the trapdoor first, wand ready, thinking not of glory, but of which professor designed each layer and how to subvert them. The devil's snare is a problem in plant logic. Hermione solves it with calm, clear instructions. The keys are a test of observation. Harry spots the damaged wing faster, trained by Slytherin's constant watchfulness. The chessboard, though, belongs to Ron in a way it never quite did before. Hufflepuff has been grinding his endurance all year. Late-night study sessions, extra practices, a quiet refusal to quit. He stands beside the knight he will replace, looks back at them, and in that moment they look at each other. A moment of understanding passes between them, more than any description could contain. In the potion room, Harry's house truly shows. He reads Snape's riddle like a contract, weighing hidden clauses, double meanings, the way a single misplaced assumption can kill you. He chooses the correct vial, not by bravado but by cold, Slytherin puzzle solving, then hands Hermione the bottle that will send her back, trusting her to take what they have learned to someone who can still move pieces on the larger board. Facing Quirrell and the shade of Voldemort, the conversation bends in a new direction. The offer is the same, join me, we are alike. But Harry hears it now as a Slytherin, as someone who has watched his housemates measure lineage and destiny over the firelight. He sees not temptation, but a failed path, an obsolete claim to a future the Hat has already reassigned. He looks at the man who tried to own death and understands this is a throne that collapsed under its own weight. He rejects it not as a frightened child, but as a rival destiny, one he is meant to replace, not mirror. And somewhere far above the castle shifts, as if taking note that the first thread has pulled tight. The chamber is open and full of whispers. Autumn 1992. Second year, the words first appear in green, wet strokes on a stone corridor, and the whole castle seems to lean toward Slytherin House. For Harry, the shift is immediate. He walks into the common room that night, and every conversation stops half a beat too late. The air of Slytherin. The phrase coils differently when you sleep beneath green and silver, when the founder's face looks down from every tapestry. Suspicion does not creep, it lands. Parseltongue, the Dark Lord's killing curse, the baby who lived. The pattern is too easy, and the house that prides itself on pattern recognition takes it up at once. He has been planning this year carefully, or thought he had. Study schedules with Hermione, quiet letters to goblin solicitors about certain old laws. A promise to himself that he will understand more of this world before it tries to claim him again. None of that preparation covers the way even friendly Slytherins start to watch him, weighing lineage against danger, opportunity against risk. Hermione feels the same pressure in a different tower. Ravenclaw's library annex is colder, higher, closer to the sky. It holds architectural plans of the castle, bestiaries no one has checked out in decades, marginal notes in a founder's sharp hand. She walks the stacks with ink on her fingers and a list in her mind, pipes, water, reflections, the way Mrs. Norris was found. She knows the rules of magical ecosystems now, has read 3 treatises on basilisk breeding bands. When she connects it, serpents plumbing indirect gazes, she moves too fast, too visible. The air is watching for anyone who might name the monster. Hermione is attacked days earlier than in the original timeline, frozen beside a fallen book on enchanted stonework, eyes wide with knowledge that almost made it to Harry. In Hufflepuff, Ron moves through a different network. Their common room is close to the kitchens, close to gossip that starts with house elves and ends with prefects. He listens. Who is most afraid to walk the corridors? Which pure-blood families speak a little too calmly about old purges and necessary corrections? He hears the names of Slytherin parents who send approving letters home, who tell their children to keep their heads down and let history work. Ron brings that information to Harry in quiet corners, his voice low. The attacks are not just terror, they are a test of loyalties. When Harry speaks Parseltongue in the dueling club, the room recoils as one. Yet somewhere, behind the hat's stitched brim, this was always the point. It did not place a snake speaker in Slytherin by accident. It placed him where that language is birthright, where entering the chamber will read not as invasion, but as succession. So when he finally stands before the whetstone face of Salazar Slytherin and hisses the command, the doors respond like they have been waiting for him. The basilisk pours out of the dark, all scale and hunger and age. Tom Riddle looks almost amused, but Harry feels something else moving under the fear. This is not only a monster to kill, it is a power structure to redirect. He looks at the serpent, then at the memory boy who claims to be the true heir. He looks at her. She looks at him. Hermione's absence is a weight at his side, more than any description could contain. He understands the hat brought him here to claim, not just to destroy, to take Slytherin's serpentine legacy and bend it toward a different throne, one he has not yet fully seen. The basilisk lunges. Harry raises the sword. And somewhere in the stone an older destiny stirs, waiting to see which master he will choose to become. Night again, the castle breathing fog and secrets. Third year begins under wanted posters. Harry watches his own face reflected in Sirius Black's sunken eyes on the parchment, the moving photograph glancing up with a wildness everyone insists is murder. A Slytherin heir with a fugitive godfather. Some staff look at him as if the hat has finally shown its hand. Others, like McGonagall and Flitwick, look longer, as if testing a theory. If a Slytherin boy can stand against Voldemort twice, what else might that house become? Lupin arrives thin, tired, carrying an old briefcase that smells of chocolate and rain. He looks at Harry with a softness that startles, then with a flicker of caution when he sees the green-trimmed robes. Slytherin. The house that sheltered Snape. The house that birthed the Death Eaters who hunted his friends. He has been planning this year as a simple return to teaching, to paying old debts. Instead, he finds James's eyes in a serpent's colours. In their first private conversation, in the office full of rattling cases and boggart wardrobes, Lupin studies him. Harry feels it. The weighing. Is this boy more open to darker promises? Or is he proof that the line between houses is thinner than scars? When the truth about Sirius begins to surface, that question sharpens. Some whisper that a Slytherin Harry might follow a Black, others, quieter, wonder if he might redeem one. Hermione's year in Ravenclaw turns on a loop of hours. The time turner rests against her collarbone like a second pulse. To her house, it is a perfect Ravenclaw problem. Time, cause, consequence. But Dumbledore did not sign off on this alone. The hat saw something when it dropped her at that table of blue and bronze. A future lawgiver who will one day rewrite entire sections of the Visengarmut Charter. She walks the same corridor 3 times in one evening, watching how a single delayed conversation shifts who sits with whom, which prefect breaks up which argument, how a missed essay consultation leads to a lost scholarship letter from a magical research institute. She starts keeping notes, outcomes, ripples, unintended costs. She looks at Harry. She looks at Ron. A moment of understanding passes between them that this is not just about saving Buckbeak, this is training for governance. Ron in Hufflepuff becomes the quiet hinge of the school. When the news about Sirius breaks, panic runs like cold water through the common rooms. Some Slytherins receive howlers from frightened parents. A few Gryffindors mutter that of course the murderer is a Black. Ron hears it all. He has been planning this conversation since the first whispers. In the Hufflepuff basement, warm with firelight and tea, he stands up and says, simply, that hunting classmates will not make anyone safer. He reminds them that Harry sleeps in the Slytherin dorms, that people are more than banners. He walks between tables over the next weeks, diffusing rumours, redirecting anger toward the actual threat. Professors notice. Sprout gives him a long, assessing look. Dumbledore's eyes rest on him in the Great Hall, thoughtful, as if seeing a future mediator on a larger stage. The Patronus lessons shift everything. A Slytherin boy, channeling the happiest memories he owns, Hermione's parents welcoming him into their home, the first time Gringotts' doors opened for him as Lord Potter Peverell. And from his wand leaps a blazing stag. Silver, proud, more than any description could contain. The room goes silent. House lines blur in that light. A Slytherin, casting one of the purest defensive magics known, standing between his classmates and a mock Dementor. What does that say about darkness and light? Snape watches from the shadows once, unseen. He looks at the stag, at the boy who wears his old house colours and his old rival's face, and something in his rigid system of categories shudders. If a Slytherin can hold this kind of magic without breaking, what does that mean for his own choices? His own divided loyalties. On the hill above the lake, after Buckbeak's escape and Sirius's flight, the night feels thin, as if time itself is still deciding which version to keep. The trio stand together, breath clouding in the cold. The castle looks distant, almost like a model of the world they intend to change. Hermione turns the time turner in her fingers, the tiny hourglass catching moonlight. She looks at Harry. She looks at Ron. If we can bend time, she says quietly, maybe we can bend the future they think we're locked into. Harry feels the hat's old whisper stir at the back of his mind. Not Slytherin unless what? He has been planning to survive, to protect. But on that hill, with the echo of hooves and wings fading, another thought arrives. What if the destiny that sorted them is not a cage, but a challenge? Down below, In his office, Dumbledore opens a drawer and takes out an object he has not touched in years, its surface veiled and waiting. He looks at it for a long time, and the future, already bent once tonight, begins to tilt again. The object in Dumbledore's hand, a line of blue fire, faint, trapped beneath crystal. October 1994. The Goblet of Fire returns to Hogwarts, and the world comes with it. By the time the foreign delegations walk into the Great Hall, Harry has already decided he wants nothing to do with the tournament. Too public. Too many eyes. He has been planning this year as a quieter one. A year to consolidate, to study, to understand why the Hat dared to whisper you could be great in Slytherin with such certainty. Then the goblet spits out a fourth name. Harry Potter. Slytherin. The silence is different this time. Not shock that the boy who lived is competing. Shock that the Slytherin heir of ancient rings and Gringotts contracts has been pushed into a blood sport under Dumbledore's roof. A Beauxbatons professor leans to her colleague and murmurs in French about dark airs and convenient accidents. A Durmstrang master openly counts the Slytherin table, as if estimating how many of them might follow a resurrected lord. Up at Ravenclaw, Hermione is already taking notes, not on the rules of the tasks, but on the seating of delegations, the way Madame Maxime laughs at certain jokes and not others, the way Karkaroff's eyes keep sliding to Snape, to Harry, to the staff table where Dumbledore looks very old and very bright. She sees the tournament not as a school game, but as a diplomatic stage where houses and nations test each other, signal alliances, rehearse future wars. Ron watches from Hufflepuff, hands clenched around his goblet. He feels the familiar stab of jealousy, the old ache of being the friend in the background. But around him, his house mutters about contracts and fairness, about adults twisting rules to serve their stories. A seventh-year badger says quietly that if the goblet was tampered with, then Harry is a victim, not a rival. Ron hears it, lets it sit. His loyalty has always been there. Now it has language. Pattern interrupt. Hermione answers a question in ancient runes, and the room shifts. The visiting scholars from Beauxbatons and Durmstrang have been allowed to observe Babbling's class. Hermione passes a complex bind rune, traces its lineage back to pre-Founders Wardcraft, links it, almost carelessly, to a lost continental tradition. One of the scholars goes very still at her surname, Dagworth Granger. Another studies her face as if comparing it to a portrait only he can see. A moment of understanding passes between them, but it is not complete. It is a ghost of recognition, more than any description could contain. He looks at her. She looks at him. Later, in the library, Harry asks if she noticed. Of course she did. They look at each other and both think of the Hat, of destiny, of blood inheritance lines that do not stop at the channel. The year burns forward, dragons, lakes, mazes. Each task becomes less about points and more about positioning. Ministries send quiet letters. The bank sends quieter warnings. Harry begins to understand that he is being used as a symbol by everyone. Dumbledore, Fudge, foreign envoys who watch how a Slytherin boy faces death and wonder what banner he will one day raise. In the graveyard, when the cup becomes a hook and the world turns sideways, Voldemort circles him with clinical interest. A Slytherin, he muses aloud, eyes bright. How curious. The Hat, it seems, has finally learned. He has been planning this too. Voldemort's wand lifts. He notes, almost conversationally, that prophecy and politics both prefer their champions branded early. Perhaps, he suggests, the hat did not defy him at all. Perhaps it placed Harry exactly where the story needs him to stand, between light and dark, between houses, on a throne not yet named. The room is too small for this many secrets. October 1995. The Hog's Head back room. Dust in the lamplight, breath misting faintly in the chill. Harry stands with his back to the wall, watching colours mix that were never meant to stand this close together. Green and silver, near red and gold, blue and bronze beside yellow and black. Slytherins who look like they have swallowed something sharp. Ravenclaws already calculating spell trajectories, Hufflepuffs in worn jumpers, arms folded, deciding who here is worth trusting with their friends' lives. He has been planning this, but not like this. In his head, it was always a Gryffindor thing. Even after the hat pushed him into Slytherin and whispered about thrones he does not yet want to name. Now, destiny has rearranged the board. The call for resistance does not echo from one tower, it spreads along the castle's veins.